Mabibi na mabwana, karibuni katika hafla ya jioni ya leo. Mazungumzo kuhusu uandishi na mwandishi anayesherehekewa siku ya leo. Unlike my good professor, I have no tons of books to display. I have only scraps of paper, but I've read and appreciated the book by our honorable minister tonight. So, a book launch is a celebration, but tonight we celebrate more than just a book. We are here to announce the birth of an author. He's already well known to many of you, which perhaps explains the frenzied response to the release of his book. For the record, the inside story of power politics, lawmaking, and leadership in Kenya. The book has been hailed for its candor. The author keeps his ear to the ground, picking vibrations that filter through motel walls to record the pounding headboards as our honorable members of parliament, the Waheshimiwa, work overnight, or is it overtime, to ensure that our taxes produce utmost personal pleasure. We eavesdrop on conversations about the famous or infamous ICC trials that affirm that we, the citizens, are power pawns in power games in global geopolitics. Closer home, we learn how a vocal MP might be sent abroad during a crucial debate in Parliament as a way of scuttling dissent and maintaining status quo. Such honesty is refreshing. And as good students of history and literature, we read between the lines to locate for the record in Kenya's evolving literary history. For by writing his biography, the Honorable Aden Duale, one of the most powerful men in this country, Defense Cabinet Secretary, no less, has submitted his life to public scrutiny and audit. So, for the record, Mheshimiwa, last evening he committed he's free to answer to any question I ask. Does that still stand? That's wonderful. So I'll start from the beginning. So how long did this take you? It's a big book. It's a lot of work. How long did it take you?
First, let me thank the French ambassador and the management of Française for this institute, my good professor, and thank you for the very nice, kind words, and for the book lovers, book readers who are here tonight. This book is close about 370 plus page, 32 chapters. It took me 2.5 years to do this book. Of course, I had a break during the vigorous campaign of last year. So about 8 months, myself and the team working with me, we had to put it aside and to make sure that I go and win my seat and we win government. But it took me 2.5 years. 2 years, about 3 months.
Well done. And I should say congratulations. The book has done better than most books by Kenyan writers. He's on to the second print in just 2 months, I believe. So you're doing better than many writers. So we wish we had as much success as you. So you've done better than most of us.
Thank you.
Well done. All right, so Mheshimiwa, you structure your story or you frame your story as a rags to riches kind of story. you narrate about your very humble background. But today, you're a man of means. That's not documented in the book.
I'm not a man of means. Maybe I'm a man of position and power. You know, means so many things. But let me say, the first 5 or 4 chapters of my book is about my life. How I used to sell. The chapter on bones is about how I used to sell eggs in a village, in a part of Garissa town called Garissa Ndogo. Then my early school age, primary, secondary, university, all that. So I think my book in those 4 chapters was meant for, one, I come from a very marginalized community, and a community that has been stereotyped by successive governments. So by my book, I am trying to legitimize the existence of that community in Kenya. This is a community that went through the succession. They didn't want it to be part of Kenya. I'm sure you know the 60s, the shifter war and all that, until the early 80s when they were fully allowed to be integrated part of Kenya. So I'm sure many years to come, young people from that region, from that community, will read my book and will say, oh yeah, we have a very long history. We are part and parcel of the Kenyan dream and the Kenyan society. 2, that region is a bit marginalized and has not been understood well by policymakers. So when I talk about how I was brought up, then policymakers now and in the future will try to understand the whole space of northern Kenya in terms of education, healthcare, and all that. But finally, and if you see, I dedicated this book to 2 sets of people. I dedicated to my late mom and to the young people of our country, that dreams are valid, very valid. It just needs you to work hard, that you can come from any background, from any community, from any faith. And if you work hard, you realize your dream. Like I never thought when I was writing this book, that, you know, if you read my background, and then I became the first majority leader and the longest serving majority leader in the National Assembly in the new constitutional dispensation, then many young people who read my book will say, yeah, dreams are valid. It only needs you to put effort, work hard, and also pray to the Almighty God.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, very well spoken, but we'll go pole pole. So we're not getting away from his childhood.
But we don't, because I don't want to discuss a lot about my book. I want people to buy.
So
because if I discuss my book, then these people will not buy my book.
He's a very shrewd businessman. But we're here for the record. We're here to interrogate the words, to see what they mean to us, and perhaps use the book as a framework, as a roadmap to prosperity, because we all want to get to succeed as humans. So the place I wanted to start, of course, is to question that you are not exactly poor, because your father was a well-to-do pastoralist. His mom was a businesswoman. So the idea of marginality is relative, but we'll get to the nitty-gritty. So I know the details that you narrate, wearing flip-flops, pati-pati, as a teenager, and feeling, nothing but gratitude to the man who buys this for you. I wanted the same kind of details to unlock now the more famous man who has succeeded. So I am simply saying, if we highlight our challenges, let's also highlight our successes. Yeah, that's what being on the record means. But let's move away from that. You get into politics, mainly to promote the area that you've grown and come from, Dujis, and you succeed. So, but you succeed, every cycle. So you win elections 4 times on 4 different platforms. So what's your political ideology?
That's a very good question. I presented myself to the people in 4 elections, in 4 different political formation, and they elected me. That tells you that people don't elect in Kenya apart from 2, 3 major formations, apart from the 4 big tribes, the Kalenjin, the Kikuyu, the Luo, mainly those 3, where the big boys come from. In the rest of the other country, people elect leaders. And that's why today in our parliament, the number of independent members of parliament is increasing since the 2010 constitution when that provision was provided. So you can see that if the political party denies you a ticket, people these days can elect you as an independent member of parliament. So you see now, I think they're about 2% of the current membership in the House. So if you, for me, if you ask me, I came from a very cosmopolitan constituency where all shades of people in our country, in terms of race, ethnic, and religion, were living in that constituency, cosmopolitans. So you need to teach those people fairness, development. So I made sure that there was fairness in the distribution of bursary. There was fairness in the distribution of everything, the resources at the constituency. I was their voice. I could speak for the Christians. I could speak for the Muslims. I could speak for the marginalized, even within the same constituency. So it is that you must earn the confidence of your voters. And that was the best thing happened to me, because once I had the confidence of my voters, and that's why many Kenyans saw, 1, I could switch political parties. 2, I could speak my mind on the floor of the House. I was not looking behind my back. The big man syndrome was not in me. I mean, in 2007, I joined the biggest party then, ODM, we're the biggest party. And we got half government. Then 2013, I joined a small party I formed with the current president called URP. We managed the 76 members of parliament. Then we joined Jubilee, which was another huge party. And I think 1 year to last year election, we formed another small party, which now again has the highest number of members of parliament, 165, the UDA, and 165 members of parliament. I think it must be getting 60% of the political party's fund. So, so I think it's a good experience.
We can pause for a moment and say, it's also been very expensive. You say you spend between 40 and 60 million through these 4 cycles. So that's, money that most of us will never earn in our lifetime. And it blows out in 1, 2, 3 election cycles. So we know then it means elections must be only for the very affluent, or those who can access political money. And here I mean not a professor's salary or mine, but a different kind of a level of income. But I'll drill down a bit, Waziri, and tell you that the political party that you formed, URP and Kenya Kwanza, if you look at its ideological grounding, it echoes a politician from America called Donald Trump. Kenya Kwanza. He said America first. He also said he's an outsider to power nexus in Washington. Your chair, your party patron said, I'm an outsider, although he has been a deputy president for 10 years. He said media is fake. It's controlled by deep state. Exact words as Trump. And also using religion selectively and partisanly. Here I'm talking about the prosperity gospel by evangelicals. Exactly what Kenya Kwanza did. And also tapping onto disaffection among what you call the underclass. They're called hustlers here. So is that the ideology of Kenya Kwanza, and is that where you look for inspiration?
I think, let me start with the one of religion. I am a very, very serious practicing Muslim. And the biggest constituency I had in these 4 elections are the conservative Muslims, the sheikhs, the madrasas. Because for you to fix society, you must deal with the social fabric. So the opinion leaders in that constituency, in that part of the world, or the elders, the religious leaders, the women, the youth leaders. So, and that's why I think the thing we share with the leadership of Kenya Kwanza, the president, is that we are good guys. We are God-fearing. They go to church every Sunday. I go to mosque 5 times a day. We go, Friday is our key day. We participate in building like an obligation like any other good Christian or Muslim or Hindu to participate in religious activity. So I think that is not, I think the country needs that. And that's why we must deal with issues like Shakahola, there are people who want to use religion for other interests.
And that's why, Waziri, if I may interject, we need to see the sheikhs, we need to see the Jains, we need to see the Muslims, everyone at State House. It cannot be only one faction of the faiths, because Kenya is a multi-faith society.
No. I mean, I am in State House 20 every day. So, I'm a Muslim. State House is a place for everybody.
You're not a sheikh.
No. No, but you know what you mean is that you want to see us conducting Friday prayers in State House. That's not possible.
I was drawing you.
No, let me finish. That's not possible. The Christians can do their Sunday prayer in State House, but the Muslims cannot do their Friday prayer in the State House. We do our prayers in mosque. And our prayers are very structured. Just like our burial. If you go to Langata, our burials, our prayers take maximum, Friday they take 30 minutes. Normal prayers take about 15 minutes. Our burial take less than 25 minutes. And only one person speaks. After the burial is over, only the imam speaks. And even he speaks for not more than 10 minutes. If he delays the sermon, just to remind us about the grave, that life is not like this. So that's why you don't see it. But you'll see Muslims, everything. If you see commissions being set up, task force being set up, we have got very prominent Muslim sheikhs.
Sure.
Yeah, so
I was drawing attention to ideological grounding of Kenya Kwanza. You highlighted only 1 of 5 elements. So there were other issues about being an outsider. But you can move away from that and say you're different in a sense, because you do situate even your politics in very cosmopolitan areas of Garissa County. And you tell us, in your biography, that you got into politics mainly to transform that region called Dugis. Yes. So is it done? Is your work done in that region?
It's not done, but today if you go to that constituency, there are certain things, serious issues that you'll find that can be remembered during my leadership. It's the only constituency, the only town in that region that is connected to the national grid. That is a huge development. And even not even connected to the national grid, that constituency has the largest solar power project that brings back to the national grid up to about 55 megawatts. That constituency and that town, during my tenure, we did about 80 kilometers within that city. The road that, one of the biggest road in that region, about 140 kilometers was done. That is, in terms of education, that region didn't have a university. Today, we are proud to have Garissa University in that region. In that town, we have the National Polytechnic. We have the best secondary schools and primary schools in that region. In terms of Islamic institutions, you have Islamic universities, because majority, 90% are that. So and that's why you see a lot of the students in national schools come from that area. We have not done. We are still taking the national grid. We need to take it to Wajir, to Mandera. We are now, through the World Bank, we are now going to do, this administration will do, for the first time, the tarmac from Isiolo all the way to Mandera. We are not there. I mean, the county governments have come. Mm-hmm. We have 3 county governments, or 5 in that region. I mean, even you know, why do we had, there's a chapter on devolution. You know, that centralized system in our country was had a lot of undoing to the other regions in terms of economic development. Okay? Because the policy makers were around Harambee Avenue. Harambee Avenue is where government used to be run from. On one side is Kenya Revenue Authority, Central Bank, National Treasury. On the other side is where the executive power was, Harambee House of the President, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that. So the whole government and the whole country was run from one street, okay? But now with the new 2010 constitution, we have devolution. At least power has been devolved. Governance have been devolved. Resource might not be enough, but has been devolved. And the people who say, oh, devolution has failed, are missing the point. Today, if you go to the US that had thousands of years, or even France that had a devolved system or a federal system, they still face challenges. But I think we are doing very well. I think now everybody is getting a bit of the cake, a bit of the governance structure. The people of Garissa, the people of Kwale can have in their own assembly, they can decide what to do, unlike before when the decision was made from the central.
Fair enough. What we can always acknowledge is that the model that we use in the US, you know, Kenya is smaller than the state of Texas.
Yes.
So can you imagine that absurdity, that America has 50 states and Kenya is smaller than one state in America? So our tiers of representation is hugely burdensome. So as a lawmaker, that's something in future we might have to review. But we'll get away from the politics of development and say, let's focus on politics of patronage. So here you are, an outsider who comes to Nairobi. You become, a vocal member of parliament. You defend the first family, and you're invited immediately to State House by the former First Lady. And she asked you, state your desires, the desires of your heart. And she says, consider it done. And just like that, a road is tarmacked. Yeah? And initially you said it was 20 kilometers, but they only paved 10 kilometers. Maybe some engineers paved the other 10 in their pockets. Tell us about patronage politics.
No, I think you should have asked me. You know, I read 3 books that inspired me to write this book. And it's good, as my elder, the professor, has told us, and I'm going to look for the Canadian Michael book. I read a book by John Bolton, the former national security advisor of Donald Trump. There's a book called The Room Where It Happened. I have borrowed a lot from that book. Then there was a book written by, I can't remember the name, but by one of the best writers of New York Times. He wrote about, that time is last year, the other year, when we had too much story about the deep state, the system in Kenya. There's a book written by that guy called The Deep State, The Fall of the Constitution, and the Emergency of a Shadow Government. Then the last book I read was on the same title, For the Record, by David Cameron, the former Prime Minister of United Kingdom. So there are people asking me, have you copied? No. I think I had a number of titles. But when I sit with many people, they tell me, no, this is not a good title. We ended up in this. So you asked me the politics of patronage. I think the one on the late Mama Lucy, on my book, because my book is for the record. So all what I am saying is true. You remember during that time in the 10th Parliament, President Kibaki came to TV and he defined his family. He said, my family is this, Mama Lucy, these are my children. And he told the nation, I don't have any other family. So one Wednesday morning, I walk into the chambers of Parliament, and the report which was being discussed, and I'm sure many Kenyans are aware, was a report on these infamous Atur Magarian brothers. You know, the guys who came here and caused havoc. These people were guests of Mary Wambui, the purported, quote unquote, also wife of President Kibaki, of late President Kibaki. So as I sat in that house, the opposition then, which I was part of, ODM party, people now were discussing the family of the president. And they were not discussing Lucy Kibaki. They were discussing Mary Wambui, her connection with the Atur brothers and all that. And the house is a house of records. There are certain people you cannot discuss because they cannot defend themselves. You can discuss a foreign government, you can discuss diplomats, you can discuss foreign presidents. You can't even, for decency, you can't even discuss professor because he cannot defend himself. So that is the rules of the house. So I didn't know that I'll get a call from State House. I stood up on a point of order and asked the speaker, Mr. Speaker, I think President Kibaki came on a television. He told us as a country who are his family members. Is this member, and I think it was either Nyang Nyong or James Orengo, one of the guys, is this member in order to impute improper motive on the family of the first president? The speaker ruled in my favor and he stopped it. And when I went to have a cup of tea at the parliament lunch, I got a call. And if you read my book, the first time when the State House controller called me, I said, what? I am not going because all of you guys know how harsh Mama Lucy was. You know, I got scared. You know, during that time is when she slapped my colleague Gitobu Imanyara. So I panicked and I told the State House controller, no, I'm not going to State House. What does Lucy Kibaki wants from me? I said it in the book. And then finally, her son David called me and told me, oh man, there's no back issue. Mom is very happy. And like any member of parliament, today if you call a member of parliament here and you ask him, what can I do for you in your constituency? He'll tell you, I need road, I need water. So I had an opportunity as an opposition member of parliament to sit with the First Lady. In fact, I didn't have a plan. If I knew she was calling me, I could have gone with a whole list of projects. But I just told her, you know, Mom, there's no road in Garissa. And there was no road. I was, I think, barely about 2 years in parliament. So she said, okay. Then she called the PS Roads, later who became a minister. And she said, okay, can you do the 20 roads for this constituency? Yes. So for the record, I was just giving a record of, but of course, and that is why in 2010, the people of Kenya went, and I was one of the biggest supporters of devolution, because development was pegged to patronage, development was pegged to, even today to some extent, development is pegged to patronage. This is a currency within Africa. But devolution really saved us. Again, unfortunately, even at the counties, development now again is pegged to patronage. It is the governors who decide where development should go.
Yes, so for the record, it was Jacoyo Midiwo who was on
Yes,
the floor.
yeah.
You responded to
The
Jacoyo.
late Jacoyo, one of my good leaders. I have spent many years in Parliament.
Right. So I was just questioning if the spouse of the president has such power to dedicate billions in a project that's not budgeted, that's not going to be accounted for. If they have such powers, then our constitution must be pretty dumb.
No. That time was before the new constitution. Yeah. Now it's not possible.
No, it's not.
Because now Parliament, in its wisdom, is a budget-making house.
Okay.
So the Minister for Finance will take his budget proposals. The budget committee and the departmental committee, in their own way, will decide. So if you have a very effective member of Parliament, you can push some development or resources in the budget.
All right. And we must remember that even as we praise devolution, 60% of our taxes goes into recurrent expenditure, no development. So we are simply maintaining certain jobs, not empowering our communities, unfortunately.
Yeah, I say these days, maybe it will be after I retire from government. My next book is maybe on devolution, because devolution now has become employment bureau, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the communities are busy on who to be employed. They are not cared about water, health. Yeah, in Kenya everywhere. Don't turn devolution into employment. And I ask, when I go back even to my constituent, I ask, employing 2 people in a village or 3 people vis-a-vis drilling a borehole, I think the opportunity cost is in drilling a borehole.
Absolutely.
Than giving 3 people salary that is about 100,000. But I think the leadership in devolved system of government and the communities now view devolution from an employment bureau, sort of.
Okay. Waziri, I have two more or 3 more questions. I know we are running out of time. We'd like to have a bit of time for 1 or 2 quick questions. So my second last question would be, what would you consider to be the most important legislation that you push through Parliament, and looking back, you think it's a huge achievement?
I think one of there are many legislations. I did close to about 170 plus bills. This finance bill, people are talking about. In my 16 year in Parliament, there's a bill that comes every year. So I did 16 finance bills. And finance bills, they come with a budget. The minister will say, I'll build this road, I'll do this, I'll do this. The finance bill will tell him, this is how you'll get money from. So in fact, members of Parliament, I was telling them yesterday, some I met, if you remove part of the finance bill, you delete it, or you reject it on the floor of the House, you must find a way to raise and tell the minister where he'll get that money you have removed. Because the budget must balance. And the Speaker of the National Assembly cannot put the final question if the budget is not balanced. It is, by the way, it's unconstitutional. It is illegal according to the Public Finance Management Act. Because
do you guys want us to discuss finance bill?
No. I'm just
because I'll be happy too.
No. In fact, I think if I'll tell people from Monday, I will be. It's not for me to do it as a Minister for Defense, but as a long-serving legislature, I think I will begin tweeting the whole of the finance bill.
Okay.
For Kenyans to understand.
All right.
I've just finished today analyzing the whole of it. So I'll just tweeting every evening 2-3 provisions of the finance bill. So that, and I asked the president to give me that permission yesterday. He allowed me. But one of the most difficult moments, and I've discussed in my book, was when I was dealing with the security laws. Okay? And this was after the Westgate attack, the terror attack. And then one of the most unfortunate things happened also in my constituency. the Garissa University attack, where we lost close to over 143 innocent students.
148.
148.
Yeah.
No, the students were 143, then the rest were the staff.
All right.
Yes. So here I was a Muslim leader. Here I was the leader of majority who must process all bills. Here I was a leader at the highest level where the country was facing serious terror threat, and we must do whatever we were to do to make sure that we secure our country from these extremist elements. So I had to juggle between public interest vis-a-vis national security interests. And it's one of the laws today when I look back, I can say without blinking or without any fear of contradiction that the stability and the security we have today in our country, mainly from terror attacks, it's because of passing that legislation. But how did we pass it? Mm-hmm. We had to consult the key stakeholders. I remember I sat long hours with the Muslim lawyers representing Jamia Mosque. You know, I spent more hours with the heads of the national security organs, the former National Security NSIS Director General Michael Gishangi, the Chief of Defense Forces then, General Karangi, the Minister for Interior.
Waziri, you promised.
All those.
You promised not to give away the story because they need to read.
No, I am. In fact, that story is not in my book.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the guys are making. But you know, you asked me which law. It was the most controversial. If you read my book, at certain stage, I differed with the president.
That's part in the book, Waziri.
It is in the book. I differed with the president. And I told him, no, Your Excellency, you know, we are 1.5 years to the elections.
Yeah.
And you're going to send me to the Muslim community for votes.
That's all in the book.
It's in the book.
It is the book.
Yes. So
I want to interrupt Waziri and tell him.
So, but anyway, let me conclude it.
Yeah.
The security laws was one of the most controversial laws I did. That when I look back and I tell people, that is a law that safeguarded. Today, for example, a terror suspect can be held for 30 days, for 60 days. Before, our constitution was very, very clear that you can't hold somebody for more than 24 hours.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
that's why we are holding now this Mackenzie guy who has killed more than even Garissa University. Mm. You know what that guy has done?
Yeah.
He's close to the bomb blast, the Nairobi bomb blast.
Yeah.
I think if 1998 is where we lost, I think, more than 200 people.
Absolutely. And, there is a defense element to that. You're the Minister for Defense. But before we get to that and invite questions from the audience, I have one comment on a statement that's not on in the book, for the record, which you made publicly. And I'd like to get your response to it. That's April 2014. Professor Bakari and I do research. We go to the archives so we can put people to account. So that's April 14, in the aftermath of an attack in Eastleigh. You said, Eastleigh is our umbilical cord. You must arrest anyone who is spoiling Eastleigh, even if he is Aden Duale's brother. Those who are detonating explosives in Eastleigh should do it elsewhere. Had the one who is detonating explosives done that in Machakos, do you think the people of Eastleigh will be harassed?
I think first and foremost...
Did you propose they go detonate elsewhere?
First and foremost, this was not a discussion for this evening. It's not about my book. So Professor Kimani...
It's what is published. Waziri,
Can I finish?
I call the shots here.
No.
You might be defense minister, I call the shots.
Why can't-
You
why
have to
can't I-
answer the question.
No, I'll answer, but
The
let me.
question, Waziri, I call the shots. I am saying he's invited us to scrutinize his public statements. We know he made a public statement that's not in the book. Now respond to that.
No.
Do you still hold that
You
view?
know, even if you call the shots, you also must learn to listen. I'll answer the question. And that's why I told you.
You better answer the question.
That's why I told you, ask me anything under the sun.
Yes.
And I tell this to every journalist.
So do you still hold that view?
No, can I finish? Can I finish? I'll come to your question.
I call the shots here.
No. You know.
I call the shots here.
No, Prof. This audience wants to listen to you, and they want to listen to me.
Fair enough.
So, and I have to put for the record that in a discourse like this, where you discuss your book, the discussion mainly will be about the book. But let me answer you, because I've answered this question. Number one, I have no apologies to make that the majority of the people in Isli come from my community. I mean, I have no apologies to make on that matter. Secondly, I did that in my vernacular. So the same wrong interpretation that the nation did of my language, which I sued them and they paid me, is what you are doing. So please be careful. I'm going to sue you.
Well,
yeah, because
well,
I said it, let me finish. I said it in my mother tongue. That it was a rally in Isli. So in the evening, they twisted it. So unless you want to go and get now the right.
Waziri, I quoted the Daily Nation because that story is still online. If you sued the nation, that story can't be
I
online.
don't think it's online. If it's online,
it is.
I have an opportunity to sue them again.
It is online. It is online.
Yes.
And on that very fiery note, we're going to invite less fiery questions. 1, 2 questions, I believe.
No, give enough people. At least I can give them 4, 5.
Okay. Do you have
These
a
people have
roaming
left
mic?
whatever they were doing.
Do you have a mic that's roaming around here? I can share mine. Okay. And before you wind up, let's say...
But as they ask questions, they must promise me one thing.
Yes.
They also buy a copy.
I have two already.
I am just joking.
I have 2 already. So we can have a few questions. You can...
Thank you very much for this opportunity, Bwana Waziri. My name is Njuguna, and I think I have 2 questions. So number 1, what would you say is the one thing or rather top things that are ailing Kenya's politics during your many years in experience? And what would you say is the way we can resolve this? And number 2, you are the longest serving majority leader of the Republic, and you came in at a time when Katiba 2010 gave Bunge, especially the National Assembly, a lot of power. That is where everything in this country is run, or rather should be run. But then...
Let's keep it brief, Juguna.
Yeah, okay. During your time, we saw too much borrowing. The ceiling was raised several times, and we are ailing from that problem. So what will you say the National Assembly and parliamentarians can do to exercise the authority and mandate that they have? Thank you.
I think very few words. What is ailing Kenyan politics? Many things are ailing Kenyan politics. But one single thing, if you ask me, is ethnic politics. Okay? Ethnic politics. The big tribes, the big boys are the ones who are messing our politics. And that's why in 2015-16, we decided to form a party called Jubilee. And we asked our counterparts, form one. This country should have 2 parties, maximum. 2, 3 parties, based on ideology, where any Kenyan from any region, from any tribe, can join a party based on that. Yes, the National Assembly, under the 2010 Constitution, is a very powerful house, but very few members. And please don't quote me out, because they'll talk about me tomorrow. Very few members know those powers. Budget making process, legislation, representation. In fact, if you ask me today, that's why I stayed there for 16 years. The best place where you can defend people and their rights is on the floor of that house. In fact, what you say on the floor of that house, nobody can ask you. You can talk about the president for 2 hours on that floor. Ask me, do they do about the debt ceiling? That is a function of the House. This week, President Biden was begging both the House of Representatives and the Senate to open up the debt ceiling for the US government. US government they borrow from Japan and many others. It was the biggest issue in the US if you follow back. In fact, President Biden, when he went to Hiroshima for the G7, the American legislators were saying, we are going to impeach him. How can he leave our country to attend G7 when we have got serious economic issues? The economic issues we are blaming this government or this country is global. So debts, everybody borrows, but you must borrow with some, what you call it, responsibility, fiscal discipline.
Thank you.
Good evening, Waziri.
Yes.
My name is Timothy Tonke, and it's true, you've inspired most of us. My question is around defense policy. Right now, we have 2 wars going on in the world. What is Kenya's position? 1, as regards to acquisition of weapons, modernizing our defense sector. And 3, what is happening to our mission in DRC? What is your view or take about it?
Thank you, Timothy.
I think we're in DRC because of, not Kenya wants it. It's because the East Africa heads of state and government decided in a resolution summit last year, July. We are there to provide humanitarian corridor, open up the humanitarian corridors to make sure Goma does not fall, to reduce civilian casualties and bring peace and stability, which we have done. And we have a duration of 24 months. We are remaining with 8 months. We are in Somalia, we are in DRC, not because of anything. A stable region is good for Kenya. We are in DRC because our banks are there. We have our interests, economic interests, our banks are there. We are there because we are part of the international community. International community, whether it's Europeans, whether it's the Americans, whether it's everybody, as a decent neighbor to these countries, when called upon, we have to. Are we modernizing? Yes, but I can only go up to there. We don't discuss defense issues in public. Thank you.
This is for the record, for the artists. And since you are an author, you are near being an artist. You're actually an artist. And you've been in government for long. And my question is, do you feel artists have been given the right opportunities? And my second question is, this is yours personally. Have you empowered any artist since you've been in government for the longest time? And if yes, which artists kindly?
Good evening. My name is Faith.
Faith.
Yes. So I just have one question for Waziri. And the question is, what measures have you implemented or are you looking to implement to promote transparency and accountability within the Ministry of Defense and ensure effective utilization of defense resources?
Thank you, Faith. One last question, and then Waziri can answer those.
I have one small question. Mheshimiwa Minister Duale, I'm asking you, what are you going to do, Kenyan troops in Somalia? Because of that, we have suffered a lot. The war has been brought to our door. Westgate, DC2, Garissa.
Thank you. Thank you. So, do you want to respond to those first?
Yes, I think those are the questions I'm going to respond to.
Sure.
Okay. Shetan. Yeah, there's a lot we're doing for artists. You remember even, I think last Friday, the president asked Parliament to remove the tax on digital and on you guys. Yeah. So that service, and I'm sure you have seen what the Minister for Sports and Arts is doing a lot, Honorable Babona Mwamba. Empowering artists, I think you need to go and find out from my constituency in Garissa. That's what I think is an assignment I'm giving to you. I don't want to play the trumpet for myself. I will, the questions you have asked me about ICC, handshake, what happened between Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, read my book.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you read my book, you will find out.
It's all there.
Who wanted to impeach the other one and all these stories. If you read my book. And that's why,
it's all there.
Professor, all that I have said in my book up to now, because I've discussed, the book is about 3 successive governments, President Kibaki, President Uhuru, and part of President Ruto. Okay? 3 key leaders with the opposition leader and many other leaders. Till today, nobody has raised a finger on my book. Because they know what I have said is true.
It's all on the record.
No, it's true, they know.
It's true, yeah.
And it's not secret. I've not done anything secret here. All the secret things I've removed. Even I think I have something on Musalia Budavadi, I have something on Anne Waiguru, on the chapter of NYS. I have something on ICC, something on Kalonzo, when he lost the chance.
So
then the last one, I think there was one on faith. Faith, you are very right. Watch this space. I don't know about the rest of government, but there will be a lot of transparency and accountability in the defense headquarters. Watch the July-August recruitment. The right people who will run and who are physically fit to join the defense forces will be selected, not those who their parents can pay to join. You know that story. Yeah, that one. Then our troops in Somalia, we are leaving Somalia. There's a drawdown. Our first 400 from Somalia, 400 from Kenya, 400 from Ethiopia, 400 from Uganda, 400 from Burundi, 150 from Djibouti. It's called the drawdown. We are leaving. But we are not leaving Somalia at the mercy of Al-Shabaab. We leave Somalia when Al-Shabaab footprints are not there. Because the moment we leave and they take over that country, we will be worse than now. So that's why you see our international friends, the Somali National Forces, the European Union, who are big funders of the ATMIS, ourselves, we must secure our neighbor, our country. We have a moral duty in Somalia. The way we are going to have a moral duty on Sudan, what's happening in Sudan. We can't watch civilians dying. Any responsible government or country cannot do that. So it is not that easy. Why can't you get out of Somalia? We didn't go to Somalia. We didn't go for a birthday party. No, the Kenyan forces did not go to Somalia to play football. They went there. And if you now look at our border from the coast to the far end, the number of troops we have, forget about those who are inside, protecting our country. That's why you see in the last few years, they are not incidents. And I want to assure this on behalf of the rest of Kenyans that myself, Professor Kindiki, and all the others in charge of the security sector, we will do whatever it takes to protect our country, to protect our citizens, and to protect even the foreigners who live in our country. Thank you,
Waziri. Thank you. Shall we have, this guy has been raising his hand for all this while, and then we'll cross to the floor.
I'm Thomas Kupeka from Alliance Française, where you're sitting. First, I would like to thank also your moderator, quite resourceful. I'm interested more in the translation of your book, simply because Kenya is a player in the region. When are we going to have this book in French? If you are ready, you just need to call me and then we see what we can do.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. First, let me take pride in His Excellency as a Garisian. I think all his political career was inspired by what he said initially, that to legitimize this community, and I think he meant the Somali community precisely. And we're really proud of him. and I bought my copy. So I think I have the right to ask you this question.
Yes.
So my question is, now that you have reached probably you're almost at the top of your career. You've been the majority leader. You are now the Minister of Defense. What next? Are you hoping to be the president of this country?
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sulaiman. I have read the book, all the 32 chapters, including the epilogue. There is one chapter that has attracted my attention, and that is the ICC chapter. Waziri, you have extensively talked about the people behind the ICC case, and then the circumstances that led to the renewal of the UK and Kenya military training, where you are even being threatened by the ambassador. I'm quoting, you are told you are going to face challenges with my government. So I would like you to expound on the level of interferences by the foreign countries to our internal affairs, and if you could respond my question, the same courage that you had when you were writing that chapter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Asiri. My name is Ignatius. Ignatius. My question is on recruitment and policy in employment into the KNDF. In Kenya, we have a problem of unemployment. And we have a policy whereby to join KNDF, you must have have reached this height. You are physically and medically fit, but then height limits you. Because if we look everywhere, or rather elsewhere, we can have a doctor who is only 5 feet. A very good doctor, a very good teacher, a very good professor, a very good parliamentarian, or even...
Ask the question, Ignatius. Ask the question.
Waziri, it's a high time to influence and a change of policy so that we can have equality.
What's your question,
Thank
Ignatius? You. Okay, it's a comment.
Height.
Okay, last one.
Thank you very much, Waziri, for coming and giving us this session, and the moderator. And yes, I've seen several times the lady's been asked to speak up and all that. It's not that we're shy or we're afraid to speak up. We're always willing. And I've not yet read your book, but we have been following your career in the media, as you have been very captivatingly at the national level. And we want to thank you on behalf of the Somali community for all the progress and all the groundbreaking work you've done. And now I want to ask you a question in line of your new job as the new Minister of Defense. Do you think that Kenya will be maybe spearheading a common African Union armed forces to deal more effectively with this new outbursts of violence in different countries? And yes, and also another question I'm very interested is in what's your next step, so that now that I think someone asked of you earlier, are you going to stop here, or you're going to keep breaking ground and show us maybe as a president at some point?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let me start with Thomas. Thomas, thank you very much. You're the best guy. We will talk. I need to translate this book into French, into Arabic, into Somali. It means more audience and more resources for me. And Swahili. My good guy from Garissa. And the last question of my sister. What next? I think Allah knows what is next first. It's not me to decide. Yeah, you know? I told you I'm a God fearing. So even I don't know whether I'll finish this term. But I said it many years, and I'll still repeat. I want to retire with this president. I always joke with him, and I tell him, man, make sure you take care of your farm. I take care of my camels, so that we retire, you know, and become elders. And we read books as professor, and allow young other Kenyans, even from my community, to take a place. We don't want to stay in leadership until you are chased. No. I think it's good to give people a chance. We want to mentor leaders. Right now we have got young governors, young members of parliament, young senators, young good women leaders. Our role now will be to mentor others. It's good to to be judged that you also made others take the place. Suleiman, you need to read my ICC. But I will say, my chapter on ICC can be described that, yes, there was a post-election violence. And I was there. It was, people say it was planned, but it was simultaneous. It happened because the elections were disputed. There was anger. Many Kenyans lost their lives. But it was something that I went to The Hague 26 times myself. It was more of an international conspiracy with its local people here to use the ICC to fix the 2013 general election. That was how it was. There are many people involved. The British were involved, many European countries were involved, the US were involved, and you can read my book. You'll end up with when Johnny Carson, who was the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, when he couldn't stop it. And our constitution was very good. Our constitution says William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta will vie in 2013. He was a bitter man, and he said, at his level in State Department, he said, choices have consequences. You remember? You know, he was in fact denting the constitutional right of citizens to elect their leaders. So I think if you read that chapter, you'll understand. Many of my colleagues in the international community have read it, and they're very happy because they got the whole perspective of what happened. Then there is the short people in KDF. There are short people, by the way. Where is that guy? There are short people in KDF. But you know, if you could have, I went to NYS before I joined university. If you could have gone to NYS, you could have not asked me this question. Because in the military, there are people who are called the marksmen at the end. The colonel knows. The short people have, but you cannot compare people who join the military to doctors, my friend. What's wrong with you? I mean, it's a world of difference. You can't say because doctors, nurses, engineers, lawyers can be. No. Even the people we send to deep operations, you have to look at. There are guys who are called special forces, but short people, but not too short. No.
Well.
But we have doctors in the military. You have everybody. You have architects. You have lawyers. You have doctors. You have nurses. You have all types of profession. If I become sick, I don't go these days to Akhar and Nairobi. I go to Force Memorial. Because the best surgeons, the best doctors, physicians are there. But you can't compare. Please don't compare doctors and the guys who go.
And maybe we should add, Waziri has the right height for the military. So my last question.
I think there was a good question by the lady about AU Force. No, what has happened, and if you check my Twitter today, I am now the current chairman of the Defense Council of Ministers of 10 countries of a bloc called the Eastern Africa Standby Force. So Africa is divided into 5 regions by AU. It's a standby force for Eastern region, with 10 countries from Burundi to Comoro to Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, name it, Burundi. Then you go to South, they're called the SADC. They have got their own standby force. You go to the North, the Maghreb, they have their own standby force. Then you go to West Africa, the ECOWAS. And then I think there's one for central part of Africa. That's how the African Union has created those standby force in the event of a crisis anywhere, of course, with our partners and allies, the French, the European Union, the Americans, and many, many others. So these are there.
I'm going to let you make the final pitch why our audience and the rest of the world should read your book.
Book lovers will always read books, but they read very interesting books. My book, if you start with the foreword of the president, you'll not keep it. You'll forget your coffee. A friend called me and told me, today I had to look for a driver. And he was driving to Namanga. He said, I wanted to read the book, so you have to look for a driver. And many feedback I got from key people is that you start, you want to finish it. Secondly, and I think most important is, I have set the bench for Kenyan politicians to be very candid. You know, when I wrote this book, even my editorial team were asking me, this book, man, is very controversial. Then I was telling them, I've led a very controversial life. I mean, I'm sure you watched me on Parliament. My life was about controversy. So this is a very nice book. But one diplomat of a very important country called me yesterday and told me, I finished your book and it has given me a very clear and new perspectives about Kenyan politics.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so if you read, for those who want to join politics, for political science students, as the professor has said, you must read my book. And let me finally say, when I launched my book, the day of the launch, I was very happy. At least my counterpart in the US, the Secretary for Defense, bought. 2 copies were bought for the US Congress Library, 2 copies for White House. So far, I have sold I've sent a copy to Mama Samia Suluhu. The Prime Minister of Ethiopia has bought this book. The President of Eritrea has bought this book. And last week, I delivered one to President Museveni and President Kagame.
Excellent.
So they are and they're the ones who are telling me we need this book. Today, I got a very big query the last 3 days from Kenyans and people in the US. So I am shipping 500 copies to different cities in the US for people to read. So please read my book.
Well,
I'm now, let me do the marketing. Now let me now do.
Sure.
Humbly, I am humbly requesting you. Please, I will sign for you. I'll even stay for another 2 hours signing for you.
Wonderful.
Buy my book.
Wonderful. And I can add my voice and say, I have read the book. I have read between the lines, as you can see from my line of inquiry. I have enjoyed it immensely. And now he's set a challenge for himself to write more compelling stories in future. So join me in thanking sincerely our guest tonight. And not just for recording his story or the journey of his life, but for opening his life for us to scrutinize him, to audit him, and there are very few of us who can dare do that in this lifetime. So wonderful, and congratulations.